What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Team Chat Podcast, a video game show. I'm one of your hosts, Jarrett Wilson, joined to my right by Rachel Mogan.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno to you as well. How are you this fine day?
An especially applicable bonjour today.
Ah, yes.
Since we'll be talking about an area of the world that incorporates some French into its most unique language.
This is true. And even comes into some real world aspects of it too a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll
tease.
We're just teasing.
We'll get to it.
There. We'll get there eventually. But first, we got to tell you where to listen to the show, and that you can do on podcast services around the World Wide Web. Also, I would just like to say apologies for the WrestleMania that is taking place in the studio today. Willie and Birdie are just kind of going nuts behind us. So video listeners, you're having some great background entertainment while we're here talking about the video games, the ones we love, the ones we hate, and everything in between. But audio listeners, hopefully there's not too much just of dogs wrestling and the gnashing of teeth.
I think the real thing they're going to hear is all the clicking.
Yeah,
it's all the clicking is going to come through way
all the
more.
Claws, hopefully their teeth don't start clicking together. That happens, and it sounds terrible. It's a terrible noise. But anyway, you can listen to us on podcast services across the World Wide Web, as well as watch a video version of each episode over on our YouTube channel. Links for all that are in the description below. You can also find us on social media at Facebook, Threads, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can also join a Discord server where we have a lot of great conversation when we're not here recording the show. You can also find some merch to get yourself that sweet, sweet Team Chat swag. We got some t-shirts. That's the main thing we got right now. But I think we also got some hats. We might also have a tote, a tank top. I know we got a tank top and all that other stuff.
By popular demand.
So check that out. And also, if you'd like to help support the show, other than buying some cool merch, you can check out patreon.com/teamchatpodcast, whereas for as little as $1 a month, you can support the show. In return, we'll give you cool perks like getting the episodes early before their general weekly release and access to a private channel on the Discord server, the Rogues Gallery. But whenever you do that, you'll be joining the fine ranks of other people such as Allison H, Ark, Brandon W, Bro Mogan, Super Saiyan Ace, Erica L, Elise F, Fuchsia, James K, Michael B, Michael S, Snooty Boots, Susan M, and Zach S. And thank you all who support us in other ways, not on Patreon, such as writing reviews of the show, telling all your friends, subscribing wherever you're listening to or watching the show. All of that helps get the good word of Team Chat Podcast out to the masses. And for that, we are eternally grateful to each and every single one of our viewers, listeners, and patrons alike. Heart emojis.
XOXO smooches.
Okay, I think the wrestling might... it might have died down. So I think we're okay. I think it was just for the introduction they wanted to be doing
take
their...
it from the top.
And we're going to start over. But no, before we get into our French-themed topic of the day, not really. People are going to be thinking we're talking about Claire Obscure.
It's Claire Obscure.
But it's not.
Gotcha, bitch.
It's not today. But before we get into the main topic of the day, let's get a little bit of news and what's coming out soon in our Moment with Mogan.
Yes, we are going to backtrack just a teeny tiny bit since we were off a week. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate is out now on PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. I'm actually pretty interested in this game. I don't think it's going to be a day, well, by now it's already past day one. I don't think it's going to be a day one pickup for me, but this looks like, this is the first time Fantasy Life has come to a major console, and it's not the terrible mobile game, which I reviewed eons ago for Android.
When you first said it, I was thinking it was... I got it confused with Second Life, like that old, Sims-esque game.
Wow, good call out,
but
though. Damn,
and
deep
I was
cut.
like, wait, this is coming back? Like, Second Life is back, but no, this is Fantasy Life.
This is
okay,
Fantasy
different thing
Life
entirely.
The Girl Who Steals Time, and it's coming out for all major platforms and Switch and PC, so basically all current gen and actually previous gen consoles. It's coming to everything, so Congratulations to Fantasy Life. I hope they get lots of players. Monster Train 2 is also out now for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, Switch, and PC. As of today, May 22nd, Blades of Fire is out for PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. You might remember, I very recently mentioned Blades of Fire because when I finished Metroid Dread, I wanted to go learn more about the developers because Nintendo often licenses out Metroid to a publisher that will take whatever project they have.
Sure.
And the developer that did Metroid Dread is doing like Blades of Fire is their new IP.
Oh, nice.
And Metroid Dread was excellent. Now, obviously, this is a very different game. I think it's more like a 3D action-adventure RPG sort of vibe. So I think it's... I heard a lot of
Dread
people...
is like 2D side scroller.
Dread is a 2D Metroidvania.
Okay.
Blades of Fire, I heard a lot of early reviewers compare it to... God of War, of all things.
Okay.
So I thought
I'm
you
into
might
that.
actually find it a little bit interesting. It didn't honestly look like the game for me, but I'm excited to see that they have a new project out.
Just want to support the developer.
Just want to support the developer. We want to support Spain. France got their one awesome game of the year. Now it's Spain's
It's time
turn.
for other countries to have their fun.
Also out now is Deliver at All Costs for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and S, and PC. Duck Detective, The Ghost of Glamping, a game I'm actually rather interested in. That is out for all current gen consoles, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Linked, Banner of the Spark, is out for PS5, Xbox Series X, and S, and PC. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tactical Takedown, which is in fact somehow a different game than the one I just mentioned a second ago. What's going on with TMNT? Anyways,
blowing up right
they
now.
have yet another game out for PC only on May 22nd. Windward Horizon is out for PC today as well. Zombie Army VR is out for the Quest 3, PlayStation VR 2, and PC today as well. Onimusha 2, Samurai's Destiny is out for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on May 23rd. I want to say this is a port. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
The Rewinder 2 is coming out next week for PC on May 26th, and then we have 2T for Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC on the 28th. That more or less gets us into next week.
Nice. Excellent. Well, again, hopefully these pups
These
ramped it. They ramped it
dogs.
right back up again. But now Willie's got a toy. Oh, that she is just immediately killed. Oh my god. It's a murder
It's a
scene over here.
bloodbath?
It's a bloodbath.
Ah,
a fluff bath, if you
Oh,
will.
it's a Santa Claus.
She wanted the Christmas to come early this year. But you know what? In a way it did. Christmas did kind of come early this year.
Because it's been a fucking stacked spring for games.
It really has. And so it's time, though, finally, for us to come and talk about one of the games that came out in the spring that we were super excited about, South of Midnight.
Can't wait.
So that's where the French influence that we were talking about earlier, the little Cajun flair.
We
But then
baited you
also-
with the Claire Obscure.
You thought you were coming for Claire Obscure, but no. It's South of Midnight. Claire Obscure's time is coming. We'll get to
Yes.
that. But also because the composer of, and I'm just going to say this now, get it out of the way, because we had to watch the pronunciation like 5 times because we're dumb Americans and don't know how to pronounce
It's not
French
even
names.
that we don't know how. It's that our our mouth sounds are not the same as
Oh,
French.
yeah, that's true, too.
So we're just not trained to move our muscles.
Watch us just absolutely destroy his name.
Anyways, Jared, take it away.
Oh, thank you so much. But also, fun fact that this game's composer is none other than Olivier Derivière, who was also the composer and did a phenomenal job on the soundtrack for Vampire, another game that
Yeah.
Mogan and I love. So when we found that out, we were just like, holy shit, this game just gets better and better the more we hear about it.
Also, Olivier must just be pigeonholed into making soundtracks for Gothic video games because
that's true.
Vampire was very, it wasn't Southern Gothic, but it was Gothic.
Yeah.
And South of Midnight is very Southern Gothic,
Yeah.
to the maximum. So I guess that's just his shtick.
I mean, he's good at it.
He's really good at it.
He picked his lane and he
He's
is
incredible.
really good at it. But we are here to talk about South of Midnight. South of Midnight is one that ever since we first saw the reveal trailers for it and saw just how it was just instantly
We were
captured our
enchanted,
our
enraptured
imaginations.
even.
Yeah, because the reveal trailer showcased the game's stop motion claymation almost style of animation, and that was something you don't really see in a video game.
No, you really don't.
And so, and then we learn, oh, that's not just a stylistic choice for this reveal trailer. The whole game is that way.
Yeah.
And so then we were even like, oh, tell me more. But then that trailer gave us even a great glimpse at the catfish, the boatsman, and stuff. There's some you'll learn of these things later as we talk about more about the game or play it for yourself. But it was one of those reveal trailers that shows you what the game is going to be, gives you that perfect taste for it, and then the game actually follows up and delivers.
It really does. And actually, so thinking back on that initial reveal trailer, which I think aligned with chapter 2 of the game.
Yes.
Two-Toe Tom.
Two-Toe Tom.
Two-Toe Tom. I really liked his song.
Oh, the songs are so
anyways,
good.
they looking back at the reveal trailer versus the actual in-game action, a 1-for-1. This
Yeah.
wasn't a bait and switch where they were like, oh yeah, here's our super fancy tech demo, souped up, it's all CGI, but it's not really the in-game engine game gameplay reveal trailer. No, that's exactly what it looks like in game. It even kind of looks better.
Yeah, for sure. So, South of Midnight, developed by Compulsion Games, whose previous game, We Happy Few. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
yeah.
That was so long ago.
I know, it really was. That was an Xbox
Whoa.
One title, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I played that one a little bit, and it just didn't click.
It got very mixed reviews, as I recall. So it wasn't like a total flop from a public perception standpoint, but I do remember, I feel like it was pretty buggy when it first came out.
Yeah,
I think that was one of the problems. And then I think people just kind of had different... It was kind of one of those expectations versus reality thing where the game just didn't deliver quite what people were expecting, I think. So there was a bit of a disconnect there.
I think one of the big things with it is that that one kind of set itself up as like very much following in the vein of BioShock, I feel like.
Yeah, it really did.
And
the marketing.
And it was a much slower paced game
Yes.
than like and more open than a BioShock tended to be. So I think people were expecting more high octane action, found a little bit slower of an experience, which is kind of what I ran into.
Absolutely.
But South of Midnight, though, is...
First of all, what a pivot, because
Yes.
this is a Montreal-based developer. So for them to go from, like, I think We Happy Few was meant to take place in sort of pseudo-60s Britain with, like, that very mod culture.
Yeah.
Because I was watching this documentary about, like, the making of South of Midnight and how they were basically like, so one of our biggest initial hurdles was we wanted to make a Southern Gothic-inspired video game, but none of us are from the U.S. South. So, and also, we don't know any of their folktales, so how do we, like, acquire that knowledge? And one of the things that I really appreciated is that during development, they actually partnered with / hired a professional storyteller out of North Carolina.
That's really
and
cool.
she was talking about like her craft and about like passing on these stories, like the oral tradition.
Sure.
And I just thought that was super cool that they actually thought to take that extra step of going straight to one of the cultural sources. I really like that.
So I guess we should actually say what this game is about. So South of Midnight, like we said, developed by Compulsion Games, and it takes place in the South, the Louisiana Bayou, is what it's all intents and purposes seem to be. It does give you a name, but it's a fictional town.
Yeah, it's a fictional town, Prospero.
Prospero, yeah.
Prospero, that's
Prospero,
right.
no,
they
either
actually
one.
do. They say Prospero.
Oh, they do?
Because I
Okay.
remember when they said it out loud, I was like, what?
That's not right.
that can't be
That's
right.
not how you say this. And so you are to play as the game as Hazel, who is a teenage girl living in Prospero with her mother,
Lacey.
Lacey, thank you.
And I think Hazel is just about to go away for college. So
Yes.
that gives you an idea of like how old she is. You also gather from the intro scene that she is big into track and field and that she's apparently quite good at it.
Yeah.
Which I always appreciate when a game prefaces their protagonist as having a reason for already having a certain level of athleticism
Yeah.
that makes the magical realism at least a little bit more tangible.
Not like you've never done anything a day in your life. Now you're suddenly on this like save the world
No,
quest,
yeah.
and you're not even like breaking a sweat. No, please, that's not the real world.
At least
here.
we know that Hazel can run real fast.
Yeah.
So we've already got a baseline of physical ability.
Yeah, and so the story kind of picks up at the night of a big hurricane is what
Yeah,
it seems.
yeah.
And it seems like, storm is on the way. They're trying to get packed up, get to a safe place. But Hazel is waiting on her mom, who we find works in town at a
She's some sort of social service
social worker,
worker.
yeah.
I think she maybe like was at the shelter. I can't remember exactly what Hazel calls it, but the point is she was back in town
Mm-hmm.
helping out other people, even though they also kind of need to help themselves.
Yeah. And so, that leads to them having an argument. Lacey tells Hazel to go off and check on some of their neighbors who, again, like they need to be kind of focusing on themselves. And while she's gone, the storm sweeps up and takes away their house with Hazel's mom still inside.
Yeah, so like for the scene setting portion of it, their house is one of those, like if you're not familiar with the Deep South, a lot of the houses that are in flood zones are up on stilts. So their house is one of the ones up on stilts. But even so, the stilts get washed away because they are right on the river.
Yeah.
So it is pouring rain. The storm is like already here. So the house just washes right away because the river is bursting its banks.
Yep.
And that like leads you straight into the action as Hazel leaps into
Shows off
leaps
her
into
track
high.
abilities.
Yeah, she shows off those track abilities, goes literally running after her house with her mom inside,
Yeah.
which is horrifying. So that's our introduction to the game. That's chapter 1.
Yeah. And then, so what would you say is like the closest descriptor of like the gameplay style? Like it's very much, it's a third person game. You
Yes.
play from that third person perspective. It's a mix of like platforming, but it's like a linear gameplay usually in like terms of level direction and stuff like that. But also, there's also a lot of combat that you run into later.
Yes.
So like third-person action platformer.
I really think that
Action
that's
adventure?
the only thing that you can describe it, like a 3D action platformer.
Yeah.
And like, I'll be perfectly blunt right off the cuff. I feel like they should have just stuck to platforming, but that's a me personal opinion.
Oh,
we'll talk more
interesting.
about that later.
Okay. So, that kind of sets the stage for what you're doing. And then, so the whole point of this is you're on the search to rescue your mom.
Yes.
So you talked about a little bit of the, the structured combat. The combat is also, I would say, like the next big part of what the game is, mechanically speaking, and all that. How did that land for you?
Okay, this is all going to sound really negative, but
Bear with me.
I want to preface this by saying my overall experience with the game was very good. However, there were a few things that I specifically struggled with because I was playing the game on PC. Mm-hmm. If you know anything about me, you know I don't play games on PC.
Yeah.
Certainly nothing that requires things like a lot of focus or a lot of like hand ability.
Well, you're like also like got the camera.
You've got
like,
the camera,
It's
so
a
it's
different like layout completely
it's the
from a
classic
controller.
keyboard and mouse. And previously in my life, Nancy has not had need of the keyboard and mouse setup. She's really only needed the directional buttons and the mouse, and that's it. So for me, like adapting to the mouse and keyboard as it relates specifically to combat, I found incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, I never really adapted, but I really do think that that's a me problem. I don't really think that that's a game problem.
It definitely took me a little bit of time to adapt to that as well because we played it on PC. We got the game through Game Pass,
What a great service, by the way. Jeez.
Awesome. I know, like we've talked about it for so long, and we finally tried it. It's like, oh my god, this is cool. But still, so we tried that out. And so since we were playing it on PC, like I tried with a controller too, but I think my Xbox controller was like, since it was on the Xbox app, we couldn't use our Switch controllers or our PS5 controllers.
Which
so we had
is fucked up,
that's kind of weird,
way.
but I guess I get it,
use
whatever.
all of them.
But then, I know, right? Which you can get the game on Steam as well. We just got it through Game Pass.
Because it was only $1 for
know,
the trial.
with the trial.
And then we didn't cancel, so it was $12.
And so, it's... Shit, I forgot what I was saying there too.
Controller?
Oh, yes. And I tried it with a controller too, and my old Xbox controller had serious drift issues, so I think it was a controller thing there. So I also played on the mouse keyboard. And it took me the first few little bits. Like I was definitely kind of having to be like, all right. Like adjust the sensitivity, get things kind of reined in a bit because I felt like
more than I did.
Going all over the place with like my lock-on and stuff.
As soon as because I'll say this, the combat is not particularly challenging. At least I don't think it is.
No,
it's
I
just
played it on a harder difficulty and it really wasn't that bad.
The thing is, I was playing it on normal mode, but I died so many times just because I sucked ass at the controls. And I was like, you know what? That's not what I'm playing this game for. I am not here for the combat. I'm here for the platforming and the story. Everything else can go by the wayside. So I did take my difficulty down. Not to they had like 5 different levels. There was middle and then like story mode and then like really, really story mode for if you really didn't want to fight. I was in that middle easy ground.
Nice.
Which I have to say, great choice. So if you're really interested in South of Midnight, but you also think you're going to have to play mouse and keyboard and you're not used to it, so you're not going to excel at it, just play the easy mode. It's totally fine, bro.
Or take some time and adjust your controls.
No,
Either way.
just play easy mode.
But you talked about the combat being structured. It is very structured.
Yes.
Like you run along the levels and then you will get to very specific areas where you will do combat in. You won't like have combat areas where like you'll stumble across an enemy just like roving through the world. It's not open world in that way at all. It is very much like you travel from one place to another. There's some platforming in it, some environmental puzzles here and there maybe, but you pretty much and then arrive at a combat zone, you fight, and you move on.
Which, to be fair, I do appreciate that there's an in-game pretty good reason for that. So Hazel, we talked about the abilities of a weaver. Mm-hmm. So the weaver's whole thing is they are quite literally like latching on to the ills of the past, and the enemies that you fight are called haints, like haunts but like worse, and they're like horrible demonic creatures. Which, for starters, quick tangent, can we talk about the audio design?
So good.
Because the sounds, I mean both the good and the bad, and bad meaning like bad like grotesque bad,
right.
Because the horrible like guttural croaking, clicking, moaning noises that the haints make. I had my headphones on for this one, so I was like, God, God, they sound just so scary.
They really do.
Really good sound design.
And also, too, the just the art design in general.
Yes.
Or, I mean, we could talk about that for the whole game.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
again, we talked about the stop motion kind of claymation look of this game. But, like, the Haints themselves, like, when they would, like, appear and like and everything into the battle, they like start first with like an orb and then like grotesquely and like quickly like unravel and stuff to reveal with a creature. And there were several different kinds of Haints. There's just like a straight up one that just comes and runs at you and like slashes around and stuff like that. There's a one that's like shoots projectiles.
My least favorite one.
They were squishy, but they were hard to get to.
Oh man, because they run away so fast. Ugh.
Yeah. And then there was the ones who like a protector one, it could like shield another Haint. There was like
the thing that's just like a little plant that like shoots out bugs.
Yeah.
Ew, icky.
And then there were a couple like bigger guys too,
big,
like more like
boys.
mid-tier boss kind of guys that you would have to fight every once in a while. But the combat itself was, it was pretty much like you could do a basic combo of like, attack four times.
You do click, and it does a little combo.
Exactly. But then as you progress also through the game, you'll unlock, because as you defeat Haints and everything like that, and also just do some general exploration and find collectibles, you will earn floof.
Which, hilarious.
Right? Which is basically the currency of the game. And you can use that on your skill tree to upgrade your various attacks and get yourself some different abilities. Also, your weapons are awesome because they're like weaver's needles or stitch.
They're weaver's hooks. Like
Weaver's
imagine
hooks.
in your mind like a crochet hook, but really exaggerated. So like they're the size of Hazel's arms, basically, almost like nunchucks.
Yeah.
but not quite. And she's literally like ripping the threads of the grand tapestry in the form of Haints out of the air. So like that's sort of the thematic way that combat works, is you're tearing the parts and then you're tearing the Haints apart literally at the seams.
Yeah.
So she's got her weaver's hooks. She's also got a big spindle on her back, which I kind of feel like the game sort of didn't super explain.
It is what allows some of the other stuff you would get. You had your weaver's hooks; those are your main attacks and stuff. And then the other stuff you would get, like the spindle and other stuff like that, is what gave you your other abilities, like the hook, like the like grappling hook pull.
Okay.
You also got a push ability.
Yes.
And then you also had. Well, we'll get to the very last one. The very last ability you unlock. We'll get to that later because
He's my favorite.
It's the best. But yeah, you have the pull, the push. And then
the one that's like wrap, where you like
weaves them up together and just like will like hold them in place. You do amplified damage and stuff like that. Each of those things can then be upgraded as you progress throughout the game and everything like that. Were you actually able to get the whole skill tree leveled out?
No, I didn't.
I wasn't either.
I just like wasn't really exploring to the extent of being able to find all of the hidden floofs to max out the skill tree.
Yeah.
So no. The answer is no. I did not max it out. Really, the only abilities that I focused on were your core ones. So weave, push, pull, and the final one that we haven't talked about yet. I didn't bother. There were like two trees. There were all of your main core abilities, and then like this other little tree that would give you more mechanically motivated skills.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind that the mechanics were what I was struggling with. So I went, no. I do not need those. Those will not help me here.
So then, once you go through these areas and you defeat all the enemies that you run into in these combat zones, you then have to unravel like the main.
That's what I was trying to get around
what was it called?
to. So sorry, I totally got off track here. Yes, the knot. So that's what I was getting around to with the structure of the combat zones, is that they are in those specific spots because each of those areas is linked to a core like negative memory.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a place like a gazebo where something really nasty happened. It could be a diner. It could be basically they are places where shit went down, and now those negative emotions and like bad blood are just baked into the ground there. So you have to defeat the Haints in those areas and basically like release the evil from that area by weaving it and redoing the grand tapestry.
Yep.
So that's the narrative reason for why the combat is so structured, which I have to say, I do at least appreciate that you didn't run across Haints willy-nilly.
Yes.
Because at least I was always prepared for where they would be. Mm-hmm. You always had a minute to go like, God, they're over there.
It was like there was like a barrier, like a kind of a thing around it that you could see, and you knew like, okay, once I cross this is when combat begins. So you kind of like could get ready.
And it's nice
mentally.
to see from you can find them from a distance, because all you have to do is, as Hazel, look up into the sky, and there are like these swirling vortexes of black threads converging wherever that negativity is that you have to go track down and unwind. And per area, you're basically unraveling memories, right? So per area, there's about 4 to 5 in each location, I think, and they are all tied to knots.
Yes.
Take it away.
So you unravel that knot, you get all the flute from it, and then you move on, or unlock the memory that was suppressed by the knot, which will then usually, because the whole point is while you're going through this and you're kind of like, okay, but you said that she's just trying to rescue her mom, why are we running into all these other things, is because you go through outside of Prospero and into the swamps and everything, and you quickly run into other people, other creatures like King or the big catfish and everything.
We'll call him King Catfish.
I think his name is it King Catfish
no,
or
it's
just
not.
Catfish?
It's just Catfish, but in my heart, he's a king.
And just another one of those things too that we talked about at the beginning of this, about how all the research and everything that they did into this game to really bring the world of it to life. I saw another making of documentary, and I think I talked about this in a past episode, but where they talked about how they went to towns in the deep south and everything to find the voice talent for this, and that's where they found the catfish guy and everything like that, and some of these other characters, and it's just oh my god, they just fit. They sound so great into this.
They sound so great, and Catfish definitely has the heaviest Cajun accent,
yes,
and it sounds phenomenal. And he is voiced by Walt Roberts.
Awesome
I made a little list of all of the characters that I cared about, but not the ones that I didn't.
But so you'll run into these various people who some some you don't, and you through your Weaver abilities slowly start to learn what caused their pain.
So really, the game, what is the game about? Sure, you're trying to track down your mom, you're literally trying to reunite your family, but really the point of the game is very deeply buried in the Southern Gothic tradition, which I don't know, when you never mind, bad question. I was gonna say when you were in school, and then I was like, oh, never mind.
I mean, it might still be applicable. What's the question?
So when I was in high school in Kentucky, we had a whole section in high school English where all we did was study Southern Gothic texts.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, well, we did that.
But I'm curious.
So basically, the point that I'm trying to make is each of the stories that you are dealing with, each of the individual characters' backgrounds and pain that you are unearthing, a lot of them are really deeply rooted in the Southern Gothic traditions of dysfunctional family.
A lot
of the racial tension in post-Civil War America, because those wounds, they don't ever really heal. So we're still dealing with those today as we deal with them maybe not even hundreds, about 100 years ago, more or less. So all of that stuff is really prevalent in the Southern Gothic literary tradition, and I really liked that so much of it came through in the game. A lot of the core conflict of the game is not just Hazel trying to find her mom, it's Hazel dealing with her grandmother.
Yes.
And we get pretty close off, this is all introduced in chapter 1, where you're initially trying to find your mom downriver because you go to your grandmother's house, your paternal grandmother, mind you. Your paternal
Bunny
Flood. Bunny Flood, and she was excellently portrayed by Deborah Cardona. So Deborah Cardona does a killer act as Bunny. And you notice pretty quickly that, hey, Hazel's black. Bunny, I don't think she's black. She looks awful white to me. So you get right off the bat that there's maybe some tension there, both because of the racial undertones and also because pretty quickly from Hazel and Lacey's mentions of Bunny in their conversation about her that when Hazel's father died, we gather when she was pretty young, his parents, Bunny and whoever his father was, they clearly were not around for Lacey and Hazel. They did not stick around and try to help out with, raising Hazel. They were above that probably.
Well, and also Hazel and her mom live in a trailer down by the river, and Bunny lives in a mansion up on the hill.
A mansion an awful lot like the one that just burned down. It's one of those antebellum plantation style mansions. So there are many layers of the Southern Gothic tradition here. And actually the whole reason that Hazel gets her Weaver abilities in the first place is she goes to Bunny for help. And Bunny kind of brushes off the fact that Lacey has been washed down river and is honestly probably dead. So she kind of sort of hand waves that away and then locks Hazel in her room in Bunny's house. So Hazel wakes up and she has to like platform her way out of the house. And in the process of doing so, she finds the Weaver's hooks.
Yes.
That's where all of that comes from. So it's not like they just came to her in a dream. She found them in Bunny's house.
Right.
So there's a lot of mystery and conflict there of, well, what was Bunny doing with the Weaver's hooks?
Right. Bunny's
and also,
Weaver,
why were they locked away in an attic collecting dust?
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of stuff there that you're sort of unraveling as the game progresses.
So, I think we are kind of getting to the point where we will want to start talking about some of the story beats.
Before we do so, I do want to say, even though I didn't particularly enjoy the combat, I liked the platforming a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I really liked the way Hazel moved throughout the world. I thought the platforming segments were really well done, and I particularly loved her Weaver's ability of getting like her little parachute, more or less.
Yeah. Oh, the glide, yeah.
Yeah, the glide, because when you're really moving fast and you've got a really good flow going with the platforming, and you like are just using the glide at will to like get that little bit of extra distance, and it feels really good.
Yeah.
I really liked those sections.
All of the motion and like movement of the game was very smooth.
Which is why I said at the very beginning that I would have preferred that they just did platforming instead of platforming and combat. And again, that's a very me problem. Most of my problems were related to the mouse and keyboard. I think if I had been able to play it on console, I would not have had those problems.
Which, I might still grab it on console because it when it comes to the PlayStation, which I'm sure it will.
It will eventually.
And so, whenever it does, I would love to grab it on PlayStation 2 to get all those trophies for it because, but yeah, I really enjoy the combat as well. Like I said, the combat and the movement of everything is very smooth. I actually loved the respawn animation for Hazel.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's almost spider-like or tapestry dancer.
Yeah, I was about to say the aerials. So if you've ever seen somebody in like Cirque du Soleil do the aerial silks, that's like how
aerial silks. That's what I was looking for.
You were really close. But like that's exactly how she respawns back into the world, which also points us to you do have a health bar.
Yeah.
So if Hazel takes enough damage in combat, or if you frequently fall off the map like I did, just goofing around, I was like, I wonder if I can swim. Sploosh.
No,
I was like,
can't swim.
Nope,
You can run, but you can't swim.
When you respawn back into the world, she comes down like she's coming on aerial silks because it's like, again, that tapestry, those fibers of the universe. And I thought that was really cool.
But also, I loved the contrast of the stop motion animation style with how smooth everything was.
Yeah, it was actually very smooth.
We're playing it probably 60 FPS when we were doing it on their computers and stuff like that, maybe more. And, it's a very smooth running game. You talked about We Happy Few having some bugs. This game, had none. I don't think I ran into any.
I'm actually not sure if I ran into even one.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. I did.
Okay. There was
one specific platforming segment where I jumped at a wall exactly wrong and I fell below the wall.
Oh no!
But I got stuck. But it was one of those challenge segments, which we'll talk about more in a second.
That happened to me too.
So what happened is I got stuck, but the thing that's supposed to kill you if you run out of time apparently couldn't see me because I was out of bounds, so it passed over me. So I could neither continue jumping off.
That happened to me too.
Nor could I die. It must have been that like one specific segment of the map.
Basically, on each level, without being too spoilery, at the end of each level, after you complete like the main story or like untangle the main hurt and untangle that last knot, you are then chased by a mysterious like ghostly fog-esque being that takes you then on your way to a bottle tree, which is another part of the game that we didn't really discuss. Is as you go through and untie these knots, unravel these knots, you collect the essence of the dream inside a magic bottle that you get from a bottle tree, which is just a tree that has a bunch of bottles stuck on the tip of its branches.
That's what
looks
it is.
Really cool. And it basically is just like the gathering place where all of these past pains would be placed. So every time you would complete one of these stories and levels, you would have to run to this bottle tree while being chased by this oppressing fear force, whatever.
These segments I really liked because they very much reminded me of Ori and the Blind Forest.
Yes, the gauntlet runs.
The gauntlet runs,
really
exactly.
Fun. And so, you would have each of those at the end of the level. But all of this stuff and the running, I just loved the effect of the stop motion.
Yeah.
Granted, I will say at sometimes when it was just Hazel running around, you don't necessarily notice it as much in the world, but the cutscenes, yes. Battle, yes. Like when the Haints come in and are animated and everything, like I said, they like unravel from a grotesque ball. That in stop motion looks so good. So, technically, the game does so many things right. Plus, I do also want to give a shout out to, because I know I talked about this before, but the game is directed by Ahmed Best, Jar Jar Binks himself. Yeah. And that, too, just made it be like, yes, I have to play this game.
He also plays one of the main characters,
yes.
and he does such a good job. I can't believe they ruined his reputation with Jar Jar Binks.
He made his reputation with Jar Jar Binks. Do not speak such blasphemy in this house.
Oh, Jar Jar.
But, okay, so I do think we've really kind of covered the majority of the basis of what the game...
We need to get into
spoiler territory. And again, this game is like, it's pretty new. So, it came out only in April. So, now I want to talk about it all because we haven't talked about it.
I do want to talk about it all, but also one final note before we get into the real spoiler territory. It is a shorter game.
Yes.
So I think my playthrough clocked in at exactly 10 hours.
I think I hit 12 maybe.
Okay, so you probably did a little bit more exploring
and stuff like that, yeah.
So if I had done more of the exploring, there definitely was the opportunity to pad it out a little bit, if you were really getting into each of the environments. But towards the end, I thought we were going to be recording on a different day, so I was like, I gotta finish it. So I was just blasting through it at the end. So those last 3 chapters were a bit of a blur.
Yeah, they were a little fast for me as well. But so we basically, last story thing. So we are, yes, going to be getting into some spoilers here. If you don't want to know spoilers for South of Midnight, including up to the, end game, all that stuff.
We're talking about the ending.
Turn back now. Turn back now. We will have a bit at the end where we wrap back up. Actually, we'll leave that for you here. If so what is our kind of overall summation?
Overall, I found that I think that the mechanical issues I encountered were truly just on me. Mm-hmm. I think overall the game is truly a creative triumph. Yes. It is it truly is a piece of art that you are getting to play, and we don't get super many of those. I mean, others that I can think of are games like Grease, but South of Midnight does that in such a different way. I also think that its storytelling is top notch. The music is phenomenal. Such a good soundtrack.
Because not only does, is the music of itself, the orchestral music so good, each of these stories and people that you're helping, they will each have their own song.
They basically get a theme song.
A theme song, yeah, that that plays, and you kind of hear more of their story being told to you through the songs. So very cool.
Very cool.
Extra touch as well.
So for the most part, I think it is absolutely worth the money. If you don't think you have, I think, what is it? It's $40. Yeah, it's $40, which not a full price game by today's standards. So that's awesome on its own. But if you do have Xbox Game Pass, either for the consoles or for PC, you can play this game for free. Mm-hmm. And if you don't already have Xbox Game Pass, boy, have I got the deal of the century for you. You can do the free trial for only $1 for 2 weeks, which is probably enough time to play South of Midnight.
For me, I finished on the last day of my trial and then forgot to cancel.
You were I forgot anyways. So if you're good about remembering to cancel shit, you can cancel before you get charged $12, which is still a very reasonable price to play South of Midnight. So in any case, I think it is worth the money no matter how you slice and dice it. And it's just a really... You can tell how much heart is in the game. It is a very heartfelt, very I think that they really made a lot of effort to respect the culture that they were trying to portray. Mm-hmm. And that's hard to do, especially when you're not from that place. You're not from those people. So I think that they really gave it their all. It didn't always work, but it worked for the vast majority of the game for me.
I echo basically everything you said, and everything. For me, it is kind of like what I was talking about Red Dead Redemption 2 a couple episodes ago, where I said that it's just one of those games that every part of it comes together and just makes something incredible. Yeah. And that's really how this game felt to me. Like you said, story, amazing. How the storytelling, through the use of narrator of the catfish, and then later Hazel at times. We didn't even talk
about between
the
chapters.
Storybook chapters and stuff like that.
Between chapters, there's a little storybook that opens, and it's these really beautifully done, flat black and white moving animations. Oh, and they're so beautiful. So I've kept forgetting to take screenshots, so I don't have any.
And so and then also too, the voice acting and just acting in general was so good. Every character.
Every character was incredible. Catfish was amazing. amazing. Hazel's actress did a really good job.
She
we
was
actually haven't
great.
mentioned her name is, I want to mention it because it's important, Adrian Ray did a phenomenal job as Hazel. Lacey was Cynthia K. McWilliams. Laurent, a character that we'll talk about
we
in the
haven't talked
spoiler
about
section,
Laurent yet.
was Joel Steingold, and we've already talked about Bunny and Catfish, portrayed by Deborah Cardona and Walt Roberts, respectively.
So it really is just a great, like, honestly, 10 out of 10 experience. Like, again, we didn't really have any bugs. We got stuck in one tiny little glitch. Not a big deal. The game ran smooth and played great. Great music to listen to throughout. And yeah, it was just an incredible package of a game.
Yeah.
So, okay. But with that,
Let's
we
talk
are gonna
about the real stuff.
The meat.
The meat.
The meat with this meat and potatoes dinner. And that is the story of South of Midnight. So we've kind of already talked up into like the first third opening act of the game. And it is once you leave Bunny's mansion where stuff kind of like starts to kick up a bit, because Bunny kind of gives you someone to go after. You get a hint because when you're looking in Bunny's room, I believe, or even when you find your house,
Yes.
there's a bunch of red yarn everywhere.
So at the end of chapter 2 and or chapter 3, so chapter 2 we barely talked about, but it's Two-Toed Tom, which is a giant white alligator that used to be a normal sized gator, but he got loosed into the bayou by a character named Jolene, who is incredible, by the way. She quite literally released Two-Toed Tom on her abusive father so that the alligator would eat him and she could be free of him.
And also, FYI, Jolene is the pastor of Prospero.
Hilarious. She's both a pastor and like an accomplished musician.
I mean, and it was also very much like what you learn through her story, like complete self-defense.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
No one blames her for what happened,
No,
for what she did, or
absolutely
like
not.
brings her shame on that, because she was
and now
absolutely
she
in the
spends
right.
her days tending to the poor and the people in need. She's obviously helping a lot with everybody that was displaced by the recent hurricane. So that's how you encounter Jolene, is you're going to where you and your mother were going to go to get shelter from the storm. So
Yeah.
you figure, okay, I'll go ask Jolene, figure out what she knows. She doesn't have anything for you, but at the end of that chapter, you do have a boss battle with Two-Toed Tom, which I kind of didn't even think that boss battles would be a thing in this game.
I didn't really think so either.
I was a little surprised by that, but I actually really liked the boss battle with the giant gator.
That was very fun. But I also did like, too, how it wasn't like guaranteed. I felt like there was going to be a boss fight every time. There was like certain things that you did interact with later that you did have boss fights like with Two-Toed Tom, but it wasn't like everything and all the different things that you had to solve.
And I appreciated that because it kept things interesting from a narrative perspective, because not every hurt sort of required what would be considered a traditional boss. Like the first one that you do where you're trying to free Catfish from being caught up by a huge tree, that one was a very peaceful resolution. It was more tender and like tender-hearted kind of is the word that I'm looking for there. So not all of them required boss battles, but to this end, the point is, once you defeat Two-Toed Tom, he had like tail swapped your mobile home even further away. So like you had to go find it.
Somehow
you
this
beat
thing's
him,
still standing.
You get to I know, somehow it's still in one piece. You get to the mobile home and it is covered in red yarn, as Jarrett said, and your mom is notably not there in any form. Her body's not there, so she's maybe not dead for sure. And Hazel does a really good job of keeping the faith that her mom is alive this whole time.
She really does.
So you've got this yarn, and now you're thinking, okay, I'll go check back in with Bunny.
And so through talking with Bunny, you come to hear or learn of the existence of a creature called Hugging Molly.
What a name.
Who basically... The lore around her is like she kidnaps children.
She's one of those childhood nightmares of, oh, you better get into bed quick or Hugging Molly's going to
get you. And so, Bunny basically says like, you see red yarn? That means Hugging Molly's been there. And she lives in some big mountain far away called Witch's Nose. And basically, you got to go up there to try to get her, because that's probably where your mom's going to be.
And you find all of this in Bunny's summer cottage, her like weekend mansion away from her regular mansion. And not only do you find it in her summer cottage, you also find it in like a blocked off hidden room. So it's not even really part of the main house. It's clearly a secret. And in that room where you figure out that Bunny clearly knows what hugging Molly is, you also find all of these posters of missing children, like plastered all over her walls, along with like lore pieces about hugging Molly.
Well, including that your father was even, Hazel's dad was one of the kids missing and presumed taken by hugging Molly back in the day. Not while he's dead, because like he went on to adulthood later, but still like had this interesting run-in with hugging Molly.
So this is actually one of my few narrative gripes, because I really found it. So they mentioned, this is a little bit of a spoiler for like the end of this chapter,
Sure.
But essentially you do eventually learn that hugging Molly is in fact not a villain.
Right.
She is definitely monstrous from like first look. She's not human. She's like
she
this
definitely
giant.
That's where the arachnophobia warning at the beginning of the game comes into play, because she's very much like a human spider-esque thing.
Yes, she's
very
a
creepy.
giant human spider, but you gather that she takes children who are neglected. She's literally taking up children whose parents beat them or can't feed them. There's a lot of like starvation in Appalachia, for example, and this whole segment really calls on that.
Yeah.
So she's taken children, yes, that is a fact, but she's also taking care of them. She doesn't like eat them or something.
Yeah.
So my question is, we know from backstory from the cottage's memories that Trey, Hazel's father, was hated by Bunny. Bunny did not love her son. She loved her daughter, Cherie, who unfortunately dies as an infant. So her grandmother, Bunny, like raises Trey with hate because she does not love him. So hugging Molly took Trey because he was a neglected child, and then Bunny got him back. But they really don't address how she got him back, because the game makes it sound like Bunny doesn't know where hugging Molly's layer is. So how'd Bunny get him back the first time? The game never really explains it, and I just kind of wish that it has, because I was going, hey, wait a second. So Trey was an abused kid, and hugging Molly took him for good reason, and then Bunny got him back somehow, but now Bunny's saying she doesn't know how to get to hugging Molly because she wants something that hugging Molly has. What happened there?
Yeah.
I was just a little confused by that.
I'm not sure on that part as far as like how she got her back, because I actually like really kind of enjoyed that narrative arc of it, because up until you get to the chapter after hugging Molly, I keep wanting to say flogging Molly, hugging Molly, I had up until that point thought that like Bunny was actually helping you out, because
really?
like catfish came up and was being like, you shouldn't trust Bunny, like and Hazel's of course like, well, she's my grandma, of course I'm gonna trust her, like she wants to help me, and seemed to have nefarious means about it, or Catfish thought she did. And, I kind of was like, no, this seems to make sense. It's a big, I don't know, maybe I was also falling prey into my own spider bias, being like hugging Molly feels like the villain here. So when you get to that point, and that was like chapter 10 of the game, like, and you're thinking, okay, kind of a shortish game, this feels like this might be where this is leading. That kind of came as like, oh shit. Okay. So Bunny's not just like not willing to help you out. She's legit bad.
She's very bad.
And so like, I kind of feel like,
I can't believe you didn't know.
Well, I mean, I had hints, yes. And I just kind of was like, okay, well, maybe she's actually like changing because like she realizes she's on her own. I don't know. Gave the benefit of the doubt when I shouldn't have. But it definitely was the thing where I feel like maybe Bunny just wasn't letting on as much as she was. I think she did know how to get there. And I think she just didn't know how to, and she needed a distraction or someone more powerful than her to be able to get hugging Molly.
You can just say Molly.
Weak enough, yes. Weak enough to be able to defeat her.
So I think
that's kind of what happened there.
Okay,
that I
gotcha.
think, because you find out that there are these things, Hazel is a weaver, but then there are also, I believe, dark weavers, right? With basically like people, which you find out Bunny is one, who can manipulate the tapestry and manipulate the pain, but they don't solve it. They always just like make it worse, and because they're not using the true methods. Basically,
the game calls Bunny a false stitcher.
So
she's like basically a faux. She's a poser.
Yeah,
she's a weaver wannabe. She really can't manipulate the strands in the way that you're supposed to be able to. Just like Jarrett said, she cannot cause healing. She can only cause more harm. And really, you would call her like a black magic user, because the whole reason that she wants to get to Molly in the first place, as we eventually learn, is she quite literally cuts Molly's heart out. She kills hugging Molly.
Yeah.
So she cuts her heart out because she has this whole backstory where her daughter, Cherie, like I said, died as an infant. But instead of burying her daughter, because Bunny was already like a false stitcher back in the day, she instead put her daughter into a tree, and then the tree closed around her, basically preventing her spirit from moving on to the afterlife. So Bunny's whole plan is she's going to bring Cherie back to life. That's Bunny's motivation. And she thinks that if she cuts out Hugging Molly's heart and does some ritual with it, that she will be able to meet that end. So Bunny is for sure very evil.
Bad
just
news.
Terrible.
Just bad news
just
all
bad.
around. And you find out that it was Cherie, and why she like especially bears such hate toward Hazel and, you know, like Hazel's mom, is that Trey, Hazel's father, was responsible for Cherie's death.
So as a child, like a little boy, Trey accidentally drowned Cherie.
Because he would always get in trouble every time they would come back from playing, and like Cherie would be dirty.
Because his mom already hated him.
Yeah. And so like he tried to clean Cherie off in a creek is basically what happens, and then she died and she drowns. You know, terrible thing. And, you know, so that's why Bunny, like, especially is on the outs for Hazel and everything.
And a lot of stuff like that entire convoluted, horrible story of tragedy, that's very Southern Gothic tradition.
Yeah,
like, word for word, I could imagine reading this from some story back in 1870. Who's that guy with the big mustache? Mark Twain. Some sort of Mark Twain story, something like that.
And so, you know, you then that kind of like sets the game up, and you learn all this stuff, because one of the big things that's also been a source of conflict in this is that for Hazel and her mom, like Hazel feels like her mom is never around and never has time for her.
Yeah.
But through going through this and interacting with some of her mom's memories and mementos from the house that she finds in like flood debris and stuff, she learns that her mom was like always gone because she was being this social worker and had actually, in fact, teamed up with Hugging Molly to be able to save all these children from like terrible situations that she on her own through her resources would not be able to do.
Yeah, that part was actually really interesting. I kind of didn't see that one coming, either. But essentially all of those missing children posters that you find in Bunny's cottage, all of those kids are the ones that Lacey has been quietly like giving to Hugging Molly because it's going to be a better life for them.
And like Hazel finds them and like you know, in this like towns that like, or this settlement that like basically where Hugging Molly just takes care of them.
Yeah.
Well, obviously now, like, we've got to figure out something else.
Something else that the game didn't really
what
explain.
happened to all the children?
Is now that Hugging Molly is dead, they totally gloss over it.
Yeah.
They do not address what's going to happen to the children now. Like, even in the post-credit scene with Hazel, they don't even, like, circle back to it at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, are they just dead?
They're just gone. They just went on to live their own lives by themselves.
They just grow up inside the mountain, I guess. It was that part was a little bit unsatisfying because A, I didn't really understand the Bunny connection, but I like your idea. But also B, they super don't explain what happens to those kids afterwards.
And so then after that, you know, it does basically then become Hazel being like, okay, well, I got to go get my mom, because she does actually find her mom in one of Hugging Molly's like red yarn cocoons that is basically like a healing chamber.
Yes.
And so she does know her mom is alive at this point, but now it's still trying to be like, I've got to rescue her from now who you discover is being held in Kushma's domain, who Kushma has been hinted at throughout this whole game, but you then discover that Kushma is the dark energy, the fear that chases you when you're trying to get to the bottle tree.
He's the mist in the gauntlet runs.
Yes, that basically is the evil of the world.
I think the game describes him as like the king of dreams and nightmares.
Yes.
So he's like this ethereal, otherworldly, cosmic horror that like just literally feasts on negative energy. So like his hunger is what's driving him to absorb negative energy and basically create misery and woe in the world.
So, you know, eventually at this point, Hazel has to get to his domain. Catfish is like, no, don't do it.
Catfish is like, don't, your mom's not worth it, bro.
Not a big, don't want to do this. But you realize this is what you have to do. But to get to Kushma, you have to go through Rue, who is Ahmed Best in this game. And like I said, everybody had their own song, kind of theme song to it. Rue's was my favorite.
Rue's was really good.
Because Rue is like a master of illusions and works with Kushma and kind of like helps keep these people trapped in their cycles of despair and grief so that Kushma can feed off of that.
Yeah, Rue himself is some sort of like lesser otherworldly being. He looks human, but he's definitely not human anymore, at least.
Right. And so he does this really cool song where like he's performing at like a cabaret or Kushma's cabaret. Is what it's called. And he does this really cool song, like is able to like
He manipulates
Hazel
Yeah.
like a marionette puppet.
He
and
like
it was,
compels her to dance with him.
and it was such a good song and dance number. It was just great.
It was excellent.
And so Rue, immediately I was like, oh, this is great. Like Rue is fantastic. And you were able to defeat him at his own game, basically, because you have to kind of experience the beginning events and see if you can make it different. That's how Rue like traps people. He just makes me be like, oh, if I do it again, I can do this. And you were able to break his illusion, which basically is what allows him to be like, all right, you're different from everybody else. I'll let you get to Kushma.
Yeah.
So
basically where Rue is trapping people is in like a cycle of purgatory, you might say, because they're basically reliving one pain point of like trauma over and over and over again. That's his whole deal. So he's basically just Kushma's feeder.
Yeah.
He's his bait catcher.
And so then at that point, I mean, really, it is the game meets its logical conclusion. Like you do go up against Kushma, you're able to defeat Kushma. Rue tells you you can't ever kill Kushma. You can just sate his hunger for a while.
He's a creature of dreams
So
and
right
nightmares.
now,
There's no killing that.
Yeah, he's got to just wait until there's enough hunger and like fear out there in the world for him to capitalize on. So I also then thought that was very interesting. And then so you beat that. Rue is able, then gives Lacey back to you, but then you do still have to handle Molly.
So earlier in the game,
I mean, not Molly, Bunny.
Bunny. So earlier in the game, you have a quick interaction with Rue where he like does you a favor. He does something for you, and he says, "Okay, in return, I'm going to need a favor from you later down the line." And in classic, devil encounter sort of style, he does not specify what the favor's going to be, which
but
you
Hazel,
never
of course,
take that
is like,
deal.
sure, I'll do it.
Yeah, sure, whatever. I just need to get to my mom. So, anyways, later down the line, after you do the final boss battle against Kushma, Rue comes back and he's like, "So, about that favor. I need you to do something for me. I need you to give this hairbrush," and like a magical hairbrush materializes out of nowhere, "to your grandma."
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting thematically that Hazel the whole game has been very much like a go-getter. She's very high energy. She's very spirited. But she is neither, I would say, good nor bad. Because sure, her motivations are good. She's trying to rescue her mother. But I really didn't find that many of her encounters with other characters were what most people would consider to be thematically good. Like, you don't get the sense that she's doing any of this stuff out of the goodness of her heart. She might have good intentions and good feelings about it, but it's not like that's what's motivating her. Her motivation is get my mom back, and whatever else has to happen to do that, okay.
And I kind of feel like that, she grows around
Yes,
that as
she
the game
does.
goes on.
I mean, the whole reason that Bunny is able to get to Molly is because before that, Hazel misinterprets the nature of the healing cocoon that Molly has put around her mother. So Hazel actually has a boss battle against Molly and severely weakens her.
Yes.
That gives Bunny the opening that she needs to get in there and cut her heart out. So Hazel has had some missteps and some moments of growth along the way herself. Molly had to die for it, but okay, whatever. So anyways,
sacrifices at times, I guess.
The point is, at the very end of the game, when Rue is like, "Okay, give this to your grandma," Hazel does ask why. She's like, "What'll it do?" And he tells you point blank, it will take her to a special room in that purgatory world that you saw earlier, and she'll get to see her daughter again. She'll get to see Cherie, but she will be caught in one of those cycles of trauma. So it will be a false hope for her. And I thought the way that the story wrapped up is Hazel says, "Okay," and she takes the hairbrush. The final chapter.
But I kind of felt like you didn't know if she was going to give it or not.
Yeah, I feel like you didn't. I liked that you weren't sure about it.
Yeah.
But then when she does get to Bunny's mansion and they basically have like their one final conversation about like, "So you're a bad person."
Yeah.
I just think
You've done bad.
You've done some bad shit. But then I thought this part was really interesting. Hazel just gives Bunny the hairbrush, but explains exactly what it will do. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
What I thought was going to happen is she would either try to trick Bunny into taking the hairbrush, or she would try to somehow trick Rue, like trick the devil, and get out of the deal. She did neither. She just gave Bunny the option. Hey, boom, if you take this hairbrush, you'll see your daughter again, that thing that you want so very badly. But it will be a false hell. You want to take it?
Yeah.
And Bunny's like, "You know what? Yes, I do."
I know,
It's
and
the only
didn't
thing
really
Bunny
have to think
wanted.
about it that
She
hard.
didn't even think about it. I mean, think about all the horrible things she had done to get to that point. She, by the time the game is happening, Bunny is an old woman.
Yeah.
She's probably in her 60s or even her 70s. I mean, like, keeping it tight, by the way. She's a fit lady. But, like, she's getting older, and she has spent her entire life doing evil to try and get her daughter back.
Yeah.
So if she's got even the slightest sliver of false hope for that, she'll take it, and she doesn't care if she knows that it's a fake deal. She just wants to see Cherie again.
Yeah.
So she's like, all right. So there's not even really a final boss battle against Bunny. The situation is more or less resolved peacefully by Bunny agreeing to walk into purgatory, and it's like, all right.
Yeah, Rue shows back up, and then they both kind of like disappear into the mist, and Bunny's gone.
And Bunny's gone.
It was really cool, and this is what I kind of got me wondering, is because then Rue says something to her like, you're treading the line, like something about like you're treading the line to Hazel, between. I can't remember it exactly.
He basically says, like, you've chosen a hard path,
Yeah.
is I think kind of how he phrases it. But I think that was a really interesting way to phrase the ending because, again, coming back to Hazel, maybe not being entirely good herself, was it a good choice to give Bunny the hairbrush?
Yeah.
It's kind of left open-ended.
But I think, too, in a way, something about how he said it made me be like, oh, I think they got a sequel thing brewing.
Oh, that's
and
what
we're
you're
kind of like
getting
definitely
at.
setting it up as being like, oh, okay, this is kind of like the hint of what you'll experience, but there's more coming. And so I was kind of like, oh, interesting. Because if a South of Midnight sequel comes, I'll definitely be playing
happily play it.
Happily play it.
Yeah.
But yeah. That's
So
pretty
that's
much
South
it.
of
And then obviously like you get your mom's back. She, learns all of this about you and like, because she actually like helps you in the final fight against Kushma.
She's there. She's holding
And
the
stuff like
bottle
that.
for you.
Yeah, to like take in all of the good essence
Mama, hold my beer.
and all of that stuff. And so she figures it all out and is like, oh wow, interesting. And just learns about this past that she obviously to some extent knows about because of your
This is kind of going back to the very beginning of the game, and I should have mentioned it earlier, but actually something that I kind of struggled with was understanding the role that magic plays in the game, because I kind of thought that when Hazel became a weaver, she must be seeing things that normal people can't see. Like she sees hugging Molly in the distance, and I just kind of assumed, well, she was alone in that scene, so other people must not be able to see these things. Two-Toed Tom, I kind of thought other people must not be able to see the gigantic alligator in the swamp that has an island growing off his back. He's so big. False.
like they're there, yeah.
And actually, so this again leads back into that Southern Gothic tradition of magical realism. So once I understood that, everyone can see the giant alligator, and just in the context of the game, these things aren't necessarily normal.
Yeah.
But like everybody's just sort of adapted to it, and that's something I didn't quite play. Like I didn't clock it at first, so it took me a second to sort of adjust to the game's wavelength.
And I kind of feel like the only thing that it did that you do see, but I also kind of, I agree with that, but then I also kind of feel like it was kind of like the storm paired with her understanding of a weaver, like kind of like opens up. Like it's like all this is existing like in the same plane, but there is some of the stuff later, like when you get into the I don't want to talk about that area as much, but like the with honey. Oh, that part feels like it's like a different like realm in a sense. And so I wonder if it's kind of like mirrored timelines kind of thing, like realities.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I'm not saying that any of us are wrong or right.
Both explanations make total sense.
And I like that it's the kind of game that sort of has those open-ended questions where you can sort of insert, well, I think this, and it's got a little bit of wiggle room for different interpretations, which I like.
Right, and I do think too. Oh, what was I going with that?
Catfish, cool guy.
No,
2 different eyes, real neat.
Fancy
patterns on him.
He did have some great fancy patterns. Oh, we forgot to talk about the last ability that you get.
Oh, Crouton,
which is Hazel's like stuffed buddy companion.
So Crouton is a childhood stuffed animal ?
Toy doll.
You gather that he was handmade by Lacey, and he is fucked up.
Just stitched together from all different kinds of quilts, button for eyes. But he becomes alive later in the game and helps you and becomes like your final thing. He can actually like take over Haints and control them.
He can
of all
possess them for a
sizes.
brief time.
Yeah, and all this stuff, and just it then can go explore like burrows to get hidden knots and all these different things. Crouton was fantastic.
Another thing that the game kind of never super explained, it was just part of that magical realism, is all of the creatures living in the burrows underground with like full restaurants laid out.
I know, right?
And they're just like going about their lives, which they're not humanoid looking. They're just, regular
creatures.
bunnies and foxes and shit, and they're just down there. It was very Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah.
That section was. And I was like, so they're just never going to talk about this, huh?
It's just the world. You're
They're
supposed to
just
know.
never
It's
going to
just the
mention
world.
these.
But what I was trying to say is that the only part of it that I did feel like this is special that only Hazel can see is the memories of.
Oh, yes.
I'm forgetting her name. It wasn't Hilda or. It was basically she was it was who you would follow throughout.
Mahalia.
Mahalia, thank you. Yes,
The visions of Mahalia.
the visions of
I
Mahalia,
agree
who
with
was
that.
a previous weaver, who I believe from the clues and everything, in the late 1800s, around the Civil War era, kind of seemed to mirror Harriet Tubman with the Underground Railroad.
She seemed to play an Underground Railroad role because she was like quite literally ferrying other black persons to freedom. So did you catch the Easter egg that in the section with Honey, the family that she's been shepherding this whole time to that sanctuary in the swamps, they were the Prospero family. The town is named after them.
I missed that completely.
Yeah, it was easy to miss, but there's like one little section where if you
that's
find,
cool.
Yeah, right. So that family
Damn,
that she
that's
was
cool.
working with the whole time, that you're kind of following their ghosts.
Yeah.
That's where the whole town comes from.
Holy shit, that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
I'm glad
because
you brought that up because I was totally going to forget to mention it.
because that is a very big part of it, of like kind of having how Hazel understands who she is as a weaver, and like kind of her role is following these visions that she's seeing. But yeah, that's kind of like how you get out of different places. You just follow the path laid ahead by your previous weaver and stuff like that. So another very cool touch into this game. I kind of feel like that's all of it. Like there's a lot. Like there's still more that we didn't really cover. Like you mentioned
We didn't
Laurent.
talk about how sexy Laurent is.
He's a very fine man. So we'll leave some of those mysteries for you to explore on your own. But to wrap it all up in summation, as I said earlier, I thought South of Midnight was a 10 of 10.
I thought it was a great game.
Fantastic.
I'm not sure that I would call it a perfect 10 out of 10, but it was definitely like a 9.5 out of 10 for me.
Like
if I hadn't struggled with the combat,
See, you gotta give it another
I would
shot.
have had that 10 out of 10 time.
Yeah, you got to give it another shot. When
it
on
comes
the
to
PlayStation
console,
and stuff
I'll give
like
it a
that.
try number 2.
But yeah, if you guys, anyone out there has played South of Midnight, curious about South of Midnight, and of course we would love to hear from you. So send us an email at teamchatpodcast@gmail.com. Comment below where you're listening to or watching the show. Join our Discord and talk about it with us there. We would love to hear from you. But I think that concludes this review of South of Midnight, and we hope to see you back on the next episode. But until then, everybody, I'm one of your hosts, Jared Wilson, joined to my right by Rachel Mogan.
Adios.
We'll see you on the next episode.